U.S. space rod liquefies Russian flagship. No explosives needed, and the crew was dead before the sound even hit.
January 12th, 2026. 0400 hours, the Caribbean Sea. The water temperature is 82 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is heavy, saturated with salt and the thick, wet humidity of the tropics. It is a suffocating blanket that clings to steel and skin alike. On the surface, the ocean is black, a void reflecting the indifference of the stars. But beneath the thermal layer, the acoustic environment is chaotic. Biologics, snapping shrimp, whales, the mechanical churn of commercial shipping lanes. But tonight, the most dangerous object in this water makes no sound at all. It does not churn, it does not hum. It glides through the darkness like a tear in reality, a geometric anomaly. 190 meters of stealth composite that absorbs radar waves like a sponge soaking up water. This is not a ship in the traditional sense. It is a floating computer, a voltage spike wrapped in a tumble-home hull, the USS Zumwalt, DDG-1000. For a decade, this ship was a punchline, a multi-billion-dollar mistake without a mission, a gunfighter without bullets. But tonight, off the coast of Venezuela, the joke is over. The Zumwalt has been reborn. The 155mm guns are gone. In their place, buried deep within the ship's hull, are 4 massive tubes, 87 inches in diameter. They are the chambers for a new kind of violence. This is the first operational test of the conventional prompt strike doctrine. The target is 200 miles south, lurking in the territorial waters of Venezuela. It is the pride of the Russian Federation, transferred in secret to the Bolivarian Navy. The Project 22350, the Admiral Gorshkov. This is not a skirmish. This is a collision of eras. The Cold War heavy metal of the East against the silent digital warfare of the West. And the timeline for survival has just shrunk from minutes to seconds. To understand why $2 billion of hardware is about to be vaporized, you must look at the map. The Caribbean Basin. For a century, this was the American lake, the backyard, safe, secure. But the arrival of the Admiral Gorshkov changes the physics of the entire hemisphere. This is not just a frigate. It is an anti-access area denial node, a floating fortress capable of creating a 400-kilometer bubble where nothing flies and nothing floats without permission. The Gorshkov is a dense, angry knot of firepower. Displacing 5,400 tons, it is relatively small compared to American destroyers. But do not let the size fool you. This ship was designed with one philosophy: aggression. It is packed to the gunwales with sensors and warheads. It is a seagoing brawler designed to trade punches with aircraft carriers. If this ship is allowed to go active, if it integrates into the Venezuelan coastal defense network, the balance of power shifts. The Panama Canal becomes vulnerable. The Gulf of Mexico becomes a firing range. The strategic calculus demands that this asset be removed from the board. Not disabled, not warned, removed. The decision was made in a windowless room in Washington, but the execution happens here in the humid dark. The Zumwalt is not here to show the flag. It is here to validate a theory. The theory that a single stealth destroyer can slip inside the enemy's guard and deliver a knockout blow before they even know they are in a fight. Let's look at the enemy. The Admiral Gorshkov. At this moment, her captain is likely standing on the bridge, looking out at the black horizon. He feels safe, and he should. He is protected by the Parliament Redoute air defense system, a 4-faced phased array radar that screams energy into the sky, capable of tracking hundreds of targets simultaneously. Below decks, in the vertical launch cells, sit the teeth of the Russian Navy, the 3 M22 Zircon. The Zircon is a nightmare, a hypersonic cruise missile powered by a scramjet engine. It burns a specialized high-density fuel. When it launches, it doesn't just fly. It compresses the atmosphere, riding its own shockwave boundary layer at Mach 9. That is 9 times the speed of sound, nearly 7,000 miles per hour. At that speed, the air in front of the missile cannot move out of the way fast enough. It compresses, it glows, it turns into plasma. The crew of the Gorshkov believes they are the hunters. They believe their Zircons make them invincible. They know that if they fire first, an American carrier group cannot stop the vampires. They are arrogant, they are trained, and they are completely blind to what is lurking just over the radar horizon. They are looking for a ship. They are looking for a massive radar return, a floating mountain of steel. They are scanning for the sharp angles and cluttered masts of an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. But the Zumwalt does not look like a destroyer. On the Gorshkov's radar screens, the Zumwalt registers as a glitch, a flicker. The radar cross-section is -40 decibels. To the Parliament radar, this 16,000-ton Leviathan looks like a small fishing boat, a wooden skiff bobbing in the waves. This is the genius of the tumble-home hull. Traditional ships flare outwards. When a radar beam hits them, it bounces back to the source, a clear return. The Zumwalt slopes inward, like a pyramid. When the Russian radar energy strikes the hull, it is deflected upward into space, lost. The composite deckhouse absorbs the rest. And then there is the sound, or the lack of it. The Zumwalt uses an integrated power system. The gas turbines do not connect to the propellers. They generate electricity. That electricity drives massive electric motors. There are no reduction gears grinding metal on metal. There is no drive shaft vibration screaming into the water. The acoustic signature is comparable to a Los Angeles-class nuclear submarine. The Gorshkov's sonar operators are listening for the heavy, rhythmic thrum of a warship. They hear nothing but the ocean. Inside the Zumwalt's Combat Information Center, the atmosphere is not one of adrenaline, but of surgical precision. The air is cool, scrubbed, smelling faintly of ozone and recycled oxygen. The lighting is blue. There are no windows, just walls of glass displays. The crew is monitoring the SPY-6 radar. This is the eye of the beast, built with gallium nitride technology. It is 30 times more sensitive than the radars of the previous generation. It sees through the humidity. It sees through the clutter. It is tracking the rotation of the Gorshkov's radar dishes from miles away. It is counting the waves. The firing solution is locked. The matchup is set. But this is not just a battle of ships. It is a battle of physics. We need to stop the clock. We need to understand the mechanics of the violence that is about to unfold. Because what is about to happen is not standard naval warfare. It is an experiment in kinetic energy. For 50 years, naval combat was about explosives. You hit a ship with a missile. The missile explodes. The blast damages the ship. The bigger the warhead, the bigger the damage. The Zumwalt is changing the math. The weapon in the tube is the common hypersonic glide body, the CHGB. It is not a cruise missile. It does not have wings. It does not have a jet engine. It is a rocket, a massive two-stage solid fuel stack that looks more like a space launch vehicle than a weapon. It sits inside the MAC tubes, multiple all-up round canisters. These tubes are 87 inches wide because they have to be. They replace the entire forward gun system. Here is the difference. A standard Tomahawk missile flies at 550 miles per hour, subsonic. It arrives with a warhead of 1,000 pounds. The CHGB launches into the upper atmosphere. It separates from its booster, and then it glides. But it doesn't glide like a paper airplane. It surfs on the density of the atmosphere at speeds exceeding Mach 5. Some estimates put the terminal velocity at Mach 17 during the boost phase. The weapon does not need a warhead. It does not need explosives. It is a kinetic energy weapon. Remember the high school physics equation. Kinetic energy equals 1/2 of the mass times the velocity squared. The key variable is velocity. Because it is squared, if you double the speed, you quadruple the energy. If you hit a target at Mach 10, you are not hitting it with a projectile. You are hitting it with a meteorite. The impact energy is measured in gigajoules, billions of joules. When a kinetic penetrator strikes steel at that speed, the metal does not bend. It behaves like a fluid. The hull of the Gorshkov will not just tear open, it will liquefy. The shockwave travels through the ship faster than the speed of sound in steel. And this leads us to the fatal flaw of the Russian design, the glass jaw. The Admiral Gorshkov is a heavy hitter, but to fit all those heavy missiles onto a small hull, the designers had to make a compromise. They stacked the magazines. The Zircon launchers are right next to the Redoute air defense launchers, right in front of the bridge. 48 cells, packed with solid rocket fuel, packed with high explosives, packed with kerosene. It is a bomb waiting for a fuse. The Russian doctrine relies on shooting down the incoming Aero. Their defense systems, the 9 M96 interceptors, are designed to kill subsonic and supersonic missiles. They are designed to track a target, predict its path, and fly out to meet it. But the hypersonic glide body does not follow a predictable path. It maneuvers, it skips, it changes altitude. It is surrounded by a plasma sheath that absorbs radar waves, making it ghost in and out of detection. By the time the Gorshkov's radar burns through the plasma to get a lock, the physics of interception are impossible. The closing speed is too high. The reaction time is 0. The Zumwalt is about to throw a spear of tungsten through the heart of the Gorshkov. And the Gorshkov is carrying enough explosive material in its own chest to turn itself into a supernova. The stage is set. The physics are absolute. The crew of the Zumwalt watches the countdown. The crew of the Gorshkov watches the empty ocean. Back in the Combat Information Center of the USS Zumwalt, time has stopped. The tactical action officer looks at the screen. The firing solution is green. There is no drama. There is no shouting. Just a quiet confirmation of coordinates. The target is unaware. The target is steady. Alpha strike authorized. Match generated, the officer says. Execute. It is the push of a button. A plastic switch that closes a circuit. A digital packet travels through the total ship computing environment via fiber optic device, moving at the speed of light deep into the belly of the ship. Down in the mission deck, the physics change instantly. Inside the 87-inch MAC-2, the dormant giant wakes up. The common hypersonic glide body sits atop a massive solid fuel booster stack. It is not a missile. It is a skyscraper of propellant. Ignition. The sound is not a roar. It is a seismic event. The booster ignites with a violence that shakes the 16,000-ton keel of the destroyer. The hatch blows open. A column of fire, brighter than the sun, erupts from the deck. The weapon clears the rail. It creates its own weather system. A cloud of superheated steam and smoke that instantly obscures the ship. The booster tilts. It does not fly towards the horizon. It flies towards the stars. 1 second, 2 seconds. The G-force spikes. The missile punches through the thick tropical air, leaving a vertical scar of white smoke. It ascends through 10,000 feet, 20,000, 50,000. It leaves the weather behind. It leaves the atmosphere behind. At the edge of space, the booster burns out. It has done its job. It falls away. Now, the glide body is free. This is the moment the war changes. The glide body noses down. It hits the upper atmosphere like a stone skipping on a pond. It does not fall ballistically. It generates lift. It surfs the air density layers. It is moving at Mach 17. Friction takes over. The air in front of the nose cone cannot move. It is crushed. The temperature spikes to 3,000 Kelvin. The air molecules are ripped apart. They turn into plasma. A sheath of ionized gas wraps around the weapon. It glows with a blinding blue-white incandescence. To a visual observer, it would look like a meteor. To a radar, it is a ghost. The plasma absorbs the radio waves. It hides the weapon in a cloak of superheated energy. On the bridge of the Admiral Gorshkov, the first warning is not a siren. It is a visual anomaly. A lookout on the wing of the bridge sees it. A streak of light high in the zenith. Too bright to be a star. Too fast to be a plane. "Flash!" he yells. "Bearing 010, high angle." The radar operator stares at his scope. The Parliament radar is searching. It sees nothing. Then it sees everything. The plasma burns through. The return signal screams on the display, but the computer cannot process it. The velocity is impossible. The object is closing at 5 kilometers per second. The fire control system tries to calculate an intercept. It tries to slew the Redoute launchers, but the math fails. The gears cannot turn fast enough. The loop is broken. There is no time to pray. There is no time to brace. The weapon arrives. Silence. The impact happens in absolute silence. The weapon is moving faster than its own sound. The sonic boom is miles behind it. The tungsten penetrator strikes the foredeck of the Gorshkov, right between the gun and the bridge, right on top of the vertical launch system. It does not crumple. It does not explode. It executes the laws of physics. The kinetic energy transfer is instantaneous. 4 gigajoules of energy are dumped into the steel structure in a millisecond. The deck plating does not tear. It liquefies. The steel splashes like water. It petals outward, jagged triangles of metal glowing cherry red. The penetrator continues. It punches through the armored hatch. It smashes through the missile canisters. It creates a shockwave that travels through the ship's frame at 13,000 miles per hour. Inside the hull, the internal overpressure spikes to thousands of psi instantly. liquefying soft tissue and shattering avionics. The crew in the forward compartments are not killed by shrapnel. They are killed by overpressure. Their lungs collapse. Then the penetrator exits the keel. It punches a hole in the bottom of the ship and disappears into the ocean floor. But the real destruction has just begun. The glass jaw shatters. The friction of the impact ignites the rocket fuel. 16 Zircon missiles, 32 Redoute interceptors, tons of solid propellant, tons of kerosene. Warheads. They detonate simultaneously. This is not a fire. This is a volcanic eruption. The blast wave has nowhere to go but up and back. The foredeck disintegrates. A column of fire shoots 500 feet into the air, carrying the molten remains of the launcher doors. The blast wave hits the face of the bridge superstructure. The bridge is a block of steel and glass. It is welded to the hull. But the force of the magazine detonation is greater than the strength of the welds. The entire island structure is sheared off. It is lifted. It tumbles backward, end over end, crashing into the sea like a discarded toy. The captain, the radar operators, the lookouts, gone. The hull of the Gorshkov whipsaws. The keel snaps under the strain. The bow section, severed from the rest of the ship, sinks instantly. The stern section floats for a moment, burning, a twisted sculpture of gray steel and black smoke. And then, finally, the sound arrives. Crack! Boom! The sonic boom of the missile and the roar of the explosion merge into a single deafening thunderclap that rolls across the Caribbean. Back on the Zumwalt, the sensors paint the picture. The radar return from the Gorshkov has split in two, then three, then static. Target destroyed, the operator says. The voice is flat, clinical. Confirming secondary detonations, large thermal bloom. The silence returns to the Combat Information Center. There is no cheering, no high fives, just the hum of the cooling fans and the soft glow of the monitors. They know what they just did. They didn't just sink a ship. They validated a doctrine. The Admiral Gorshkov, the pride of the fleet, is gone. It took 3 minutes from launch to impact. The cost of the kill? 1 hypersonic glide body. Approximate cost, $40 million. The cost of the loss? A $500 million frigate. The lives of 200 sailors, and the strategic ambition of a superpower. The debris field spreads out over the oil-slicked water. Life jackets, papers, shattered radar dishes. The message is clear. In the era of hypersonic warfare, there is no such thing as a warning shot. There is no such thing as taking cover. Speed has replaced armor. Calculation has replaced courage. If you can be seen, you can be killed, and you will be dead before you hear the sound of the gun. The Zumwalt turns slowly. The tumble-home hull cuts through the black water, leaving almost no wake. It slips back into the shadows of the radar horizon. The Caribbean is quiet again. The snapping shrimp, the whales, the waves. The only evidence of the violence is a column of steam rising slowly into the tropical night. The seas are silent again, but the radar never sleeps. Fair winds and following seas. I'll see you in the next declassified briefing.